Thanks for tuning in to Vitality and Motion. Let this be a place to grow your mindset and prioritize movement. All audio is original with music and production support from Riverside as my editing platform. This podcast is for education and inspiration only, and any studies or products I mention are simply for context. Take what fits in your life and check in with your healthcare medical providers as you feel is necessary. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Vitality in Motion. I'm your host, Maddie, and this week we're going to be discussing food labels, some ingredients I like to avoid, and then misconceptions about seed oils. First things first, when I'm looking at a food label, I usually try to scan the ingredients list, and if I feel like it has a super long laundry list or ingredients that I don't recognize, I most of the time just put it right back up on the shelf. I just feel like it's not even worth it to entertain the idea of buying it. Now, that's not to say that I don't make exceptions, because I do, but for the most part, I try to limit that as much as possible. As I've said before, consistency, not perfection. So keep that in the back of your mind always. Some of the apps that I like to use, especially if you're just unfamiliar with stuff and you want to double check, is Yucca and EWG Healthy Living. So I'll definitely link those in my show notes. And then next thing I'll look at is I'll just kind of glance at the calories. I just think of them as energy, like gas in your car. You're always going to need calories. So I don't necessarily always pay too much close attention to the number per se. Anyway, the next thing I'll look at is the macronutrients, which are very important. So that's going to be carbohydrates, the fats, and the protein. Now, just to give a little mini overview, carbs are your body's main source of energy. Fats are essential for hormones, brain health, and nutrient absorption. Unsaturated fats are generally good for your heart, but saturated and trans fats should be limited or avoided. And then protein helps with muscle repair, recovery, and just keeping you full longer. Depending on your body weight and your activity level, the total amount of calories, and then how many carbs, fats, protein ratio just depends on your fitness goals or just your nutrient goals. So that would definitely be something that you should check in with a nutritionist or a personal trainer or someone in that realm that could help you further if you're not quite sure what those ratios should look like for you. And then I also wanted to touch on sodium, because I feel like sodium gets a bad rep sometimes, but it is a necessary electrolyte for our bodies for nerve and muscle function. Obviously, where we get into trouble is excessive sodium. But if you're in the gym a lot or you're an athlete, you definitely want to try to replenish your electrolytes or sodium. And so some people like to do Celtic salt or just an electrolyte drink, something that'll just boost that back up. You do want to keep in mind, though, that the FDA does recommend 2,300 milligrams or less. And then another thing I may glance at is the cholesterol. FDA recommends about 300 milligrams per day. And to kind of explain the different types, because I know sometimes LDL versus HDL can be confusing, but basically they kind of balance each other out. So LDL, or low density lipoprotein, is what carries the cholesterol to the cell for building, and then the HDL, or the high density lipoprotein, removes the excessive cholesterol from the bloodstream. So you need that constant balance of both to help maintain a good cholesterol level. And then lastly, I did want to discuss the difference between added sugars and natural sugars, and then total sugars. I feel like if you take anything away from what I just said, this would probably be the most important point. So added sugars are, as it sounds, added during process or preparation of the food. And then natural sugars are going to be anything found in nature. So this may be things like fruit, or honey, or maple syrup. Then total sugars is the combination of the two. So according to the American Heart Association, for women, we should be consuming about 25 grams or less of added sugar a day. And then for men, it's about 36 grams of added sugar or less a day. So a challenge for you would be to see what foods you consume on a daily basis and how much added sugar it has on the labels. Like I said, they combine the added and the natural sugar total, so it's obviously going to be a higher number compared to just the added versus just the natural. And sometimes they will make honey and maple syrup considered as a added sugar, but if it's from a pure source, I consider that a natural sugar. I think they are good alternatives to replace in your diet, especially some other examples maybe like coconut sugar or agave syrup. There are other options out there, or even now, I think some people like to make date syrup or use dates in a lot of stuff for a sweetener. And so it's definitely a safer option, especially now because they're coming out with research linking added sugar content to Alzheimer's and dementia. So you want to try to protect your brain and your body now versus later when it's too late. Definitely something to consider and to look into and to really test yourself and see, like, how much added sugar am I actually consuming on a daily basis? Because it's probably more than you think. And 25 grams, especially for a woman, is not a lot. I'll get off my soapbox of that for now. Anyways, to transition from that, I wanted to briefly discuss some ingredients that I like to avoid when buying products. So most of us have probably heard of these, but just to kind of reiterate, high fructose corn syrup, which is basically a chemically processed sugar, is unfortunately in a lot of our sodas, juices, and cereals automatically no. Like, I am not buying anything with that ingredient in it. And then another one is artificial food dyes, which are synthetic dyes to basically give our food a brighter color. And it's just kind of mind-boggling because it's in things like chips, pickles, candy, and it's like, I'm not buying pickles because of the pretty color. I'm buying pickles because I like the taste of pickles. Do you feel me? So I don't really understand all of that. But anyway, those are like the two main ones I like to avoid. And then I try to really watch the added sugar content as well. Usually, if an item has automatically like 20 grams of sugar, I'm probably not going to buy that. Again, I do make exceptions. I have plenty of cheat days, but overall, like I said before, consistency, not perfection. And then next, we're just going to dive right into the seed oils portion because I know some of y'all might be excited to talk about this. I feel like there is so much misunderstanding about seed oils. Some people are like anti against them, and then other people are like, I could care less. So I really felt like it was important for me to do a little more research on this further so I could understand it better to present that for you guys. Okay, so to start us off, I just wanted to define what a seed oil is. Basically, it is derived from seeds of various plants. They are typically found in a lot of our foods we consume. The main types you may see or have heard of is canola oil, corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, and peanut oil. So now, why do seed oils get such a bad reputation? Well, this is because we have saturation of these seed oils in our food diets. They are mostly made up of omega-6s, which we do need omega-6s for certain reasons, and I'll explain that in a second, but in moderation. So that's why they get a bad rep, because they are literally in all of our ultra processed foods. If you go to the grocery store, you're probably going to see at least one of them listed in pretty much everything. It's very hard to find them not listed. And most of the time, they aren't really necessary, which is the crazy part. A lot of the time, it's going to throw off that balance of the omega-3 to omega-6 ratio, which again, I'll get into in a second. And the main problem is the refining process that they go through, where they may bleach or deodorize them to improve things like taste or the shelf life. Therefore, when they are heated up to a higher heat, that's when it usually becomes more toxic. So avoiding ultra processed foods is kind of the main takeaway that I was getting. You don't necessarily want to completely cut out omega-6s. You just want to be more aware of your balance of omega-3s to omega-6s. So to kind of tie this all together, omega-3s versus omega-6s are both essential fatty acids, meaning your body cannot make them and you must obtain them through food. But they have different effects on the body. So an omega-3 is found in things like fish, maybe like specifically salmon, flax seeds, chia seeds, walnuts, and are generally anti-inflammatory. And so they're going to support our heart health, brain function, our mood, and our joint health. And then omega-6s are commonly found in vegetable and seed oils like the corn, soybean, and sunflower oil. And they also play a primary role in growth, skin health, and immune function. But at the same time, they can promote inflammation when they're consumed in an excessive amount. So, this issue isn't that omega-6s are bad, but the typical Western diet contains far more of an omega-6 content versus an omega-3 content. So that's creating that imbalance, which contributes eventually to chronic inflammation and leading to chronic diseases. So for overall health, the goal isn't to eliminate these omega-6s, but to increase omega-3 intake to create a healthier balance between the two. And this is actually one of the supplements that I take, the omega-3s or the fish oil, because it was recommended to me based off of the gut health test I did. It's through Thorne, and I feel like it gave a really good background of what my body was truly lacking, and it gives a whole bunch of metrics. You basically submit a stool sample, a doctor reads the results, and then sends it back to you. So it gave me a good overview of like my immunity recovery level, like good versus bad bacteria. There was a whole bunch of stuff that it showed. So definitely a good place to start. I purchased it, I think, about a year ago, and so it's a little pricey for me right now since I'm in school. It's about $200, but I definitely think it can be a cheaper option, maybe compared to like a functional medicine doctor, a good place to start because they do give you like supplement recommendations based off of what your body is lacking through the stool sample. So a good option. I'll link that in the show notes if you're interested. And to wrap us up today, I did want to discuss a nutrient that I feel like is the most important that people should be trying to hit every day. Now, obviously, carbs, fats, and proteins are important, and we should be trying to reach those goals. But what I have found lately is fiber. I feel like fiber is such an underrated nutrient, and I think it's just more important now than ever, especially because colorectal cancer is rising in young adults. And so, obviously, when you have consistent fiber, you're going to have consistent bowel movements. And I know that's TMI, and nobody wants to talk about that. But if you're not having consistent bowel movements, then that means that you're not having a healthy gut. Therefore, like I've said before, that's going to lead to other issues like chronic disease. And it starts now. It starts in your 20s and it's going to slowly build up over time. So you really want to try to highlight all of this stuff now before it's too late. And I like to get fiber through things like almonds, as I've discussed before, flax seeds, avocados are another good source. They're also good for fat as well. So I definitely think that fiber is such an underrated nutrient, as I just stated. And so, yeah, get your fiber, folks. The FDA recommends about 28 grams per day. And so find creative ways to just kind of throw it in your food. And yeah, I feel like it just needs to be said because I think sometimes it's such a taboo topic and it seems like so many people have like tummy issues, but no one ever talks about it. So why not just get it in the open and just figure out the root cause so we all don't just have to be suffering in silence. These chronic diseases don't just happen overnight. Like I always say, take control of your life now and not later when it's too late. That's all I got for this episode. I hope you all enjoy and have a good rest of your day, and I will see you next time. Thanks again so much for being here. If you're looking to connect with me on socials, my Instagram is vitalityandmotion_. My YouTube is at vitalityandmotion with 2 N's at the end. And then my email is vitalityandmotion@gmail.com.